Perez for a very long time. And yeah, and then it's fun to get to make jokes about document review every once in a while.
Speaking of myth and legend, Marlene, in yours, Nick Fortuna is actually the son of one of the lesser-known fates, Lady Luck. What made you sort of work with the Greek and Roman mythology and work with the fates?
Well, so this is the thing. Is like a lot of I absolutely hate the saying "cream rises to the top." It makes me want to bark. It's like so entitled and like clueless. Like wherever you are at, it's a balance of fate and luck. Like there's a certain amount of luck to what is happening in the world. So I started thinking there's like, well, why are luck and fate tied together? And I was doing research, and I actually stumbled upon this item that said there was this historical link between Lady Fortuna or Lady Luck and the three fates. And I was like, wow, that's not really well known. And in my world, it's because that sister, Lady Fortuna, committed the crime of giving birth to a boy and didn't let her sisters immediately kill him. She hid his thread of fate, and he's immortal. And they've been chasing after him throughout history since then. And so he wants to die. He's like really unhappy, has kind of a drinking problem. He wants to go, he comes to Minneapolis to, kind of take on his aunts, and then his idea is to find his thread of fate and end his life. And so that's kind of where I got that little brain, was just from that little piece of research. And that's it.
All right, we've got a couple more questions, and then it's going to be time for the audience questions. So start thinking and getting ready, because I'm certain you guys will have this interesting stuff. And Kevin, you mentioned Dan Shamble is a zombie detective, and one of the things that happens in these books is sort of, well, there's some prejudice there, and there's a lot of issues as sort of the zombies and everyone else sort of has to work together. And you also get some really hilarious things like the zombie beauty parlor. And what sort of made the zombie beauty parlor? The embalming parlor. So what sort of made you work with that? What was the most fun with that, or the hardest parts, or where did you come up with the embalming parlor?
It sounds like a world where all the monsters and ghosts and demons and everything are back, which is such an over-the-top scenario. You could do a complete apocalyptic thing, but instead it's much funnier if you just treat it as totally mundane. And my zombie detective he's a well-preserved zombie. He takes pride in his appearance, and he hates those shambling, necrotic ones that have a taste for brains, because they should have more restraint and they should bathe regularly. And there is a company called the Gill Lifestyle Products and Necroceuticals that make all kinds of personal hygiene products for the undead. They have a type of like chapstick for zombies called Embalm. They make shampoo for vampires, and in fact one of our cases is that there's a class action lawsuit against this company because one of their batches of shampoo for vampires got accidentally contaminated with garlic oil, so the vampire's hair fell out. Dan Shamble's partner is a bleeding heart human lawyer who wants justice for the monsters, and half of the, I could go into the real arcane, supernatural, bizarre, legendary stuff, but I went to the even more bizarre stuff, digging into actual legal precedents. And one of our cases is there is a mummy who is suing to be emancipated from the museum because he's a person, damn it, not property. And Harvey Jekyll is trying to break the prenuptial agreement with his wife Miranda because she was scratched by a werewolf, and therefore she's become a werewolf. And so he's contending that she is no longer the person that he signed the agreement with because she's a werewolf, so therefore it's null and void, and he wants to divorce her. That's the kind of stuff that I think is just, it lets you put a mirror on our own society and exaggerate in basically safe ways that maybe make people think a little bit. We've got, the second book is called Unnatural Acts, where there's a very prejudiced senator who's trying to pass the Unnatural Acts Act that prohibits sex between any kind of monsters because it's unnatural. And there is a mixed-race couple, a vampire and a werewolf, who are trying to buy a home in the suburbs, and they're not allowed. They can't get a mortgage, and one guy slaps that they're going to be arrested because marriage is defined as one human man and one human woman. And all of these things let you go to the absurd lengths without being preachy. And I think you get a laugh out of it. Maybe you think, maybe you don't, but it should be amusing.
All right, so what I'm getting from you and Max is that law is urban fantasy.
And arcane.
All right, we're going to take some audience questions. So if you guys want to stand up and go to the mic slowly, please only one question. If you have more and you want to get back in the back of the line after everyone else has asked, you're welcome to. But that's that. We'll let you know when there's time for a couple more questions.
So in cold days, we find Perry is back in bed. Like this building. Are we going to find him as the winter night out? Is he going to be able to get out from under map?
I'm not going to tell you.
Nice try, though.
Well, the short answer is no, not yet. We've got stuff to do. Yeah, Matt didn't go to all the trouble to get that enforcer to just let it go. So.
Hi, I was wondering, one of the things that I always find surprising how much it tells me about a character is about when they eat and what they eat. I don't even realize that I'm learning something about them until later. So I was just wondering how much you put, where the inspiration comes from, how much thought you put into that, and how you decide what that part of your character is going to be like.
Yeah, is that for everyone?
Anyone.
Well, I think that you have to decide, like, one of the rules is if your character can eat and what kind of stuff. But normally, like, the general kind of, if it's not important to move the story forward, eating might not be necessary in a scene.
In the second book for me, there are a lot of cultural questions that were coming up. So there's a big culture clash in the city that's basically similar to Los Angeles in an alternate Aztec reality. And so the question of what people were eating and drinking, especially, like what forms of beverage were available, was pretty important. Put a lot of thought into that.
For me, food and drink was such an integral part of Edwardian life that my characters eat and drink all the time. I think there's a couple of chapters where there's a magnificent roast chicken that happens. So yeah, I do lots of food, and it's fun. I like that too. So.
And my guys had 3 months straight without eating a single grain.
You get his chip.
Alright, my question's for Jim. Just wondering if you consider the epic battle taking place at Burger King?
An epic battle at Burger King?
Yes.
I don't know, man. That's like a shrine to me. I would have to consider that. Yeah, I mean, stuff like that will happen eventually. Really, I would much rather have an epic battle at Comic-Con. Have the sales pavilion torn apart by it, that would be awesome.
This idea is just lovely, actually.
Actually, from here, and our sales almost flew apart when it first built it. It wasn't considered to be viable, so my question is also, Harry Dresden doesn't remind me of Charlie Brown, reminds me of another addict in Harper Middle School. And I wanted to ask you, the humanity of him, that part of it, kind of stands out in all fantasy to me, and that's what I like about the book. And just asking you where that thought came from, and if that's conscious to have him so human in all the craziness in it.
I guess. I mean, what are there really? When you're walking through your life, you generally you got to deal with your own craziness. And Harry's craziness just happens to be a little bit more exaggerated than everybody else's. But what else can you do if you're going to be a decent person by trying to be human about it, trying to understand it and deal with it on a level that still lets you be a compassionate and understanding human being? That's all Harry's doing is just being kind of a regular guy. It's just that all the people he's got as backdrops are psychotic monsters. So it makes him look kind of good by comparison, I guess.
Hello. I also have a question for Mr. Butcher. So Cowell and Komori kind of seem like dark mirrors or
counterparts to Dresden and Raleigh. Seems like their magics are kind of analogous in some ways. I was wondering if that's something that was intentional, probably is, but or something that would be revisited later on in the series.
Yeah, I kind of like to think of the Dresden Files as sort of all smoke and mirrors. I mean, there are so many characters who are mirrors of Dresden and reflections of it, or who are otherwise. I mean, when you look at the series, you know, you kind of see, okay, there's Mab, and there's the sort of the smaller version of Mab, you know, which is the Lanchi, and there's the smaller version of that, which is now, you know, Molly. And that's something that I just like playing with. I like setting up parallels. And there's more of them still to come, and you know, I'm working on it. But I have never written 15 books of you know, the 15th book of the series before, so you know, it's sort of a first time for me.
Thank you. So, another question. I know they adapted your series to TV. I know it lasted one season though. It wasn't very as faithful as some people thought. Is there any plans for like doing it again?
Okay, is there any plans for the series? Plans is such a strong word. There is interest. I'm still talking to people about it. I'm not nearly as eager to go, yes, let me grab onto whatever chance that is at this point. Not because the first experience was bad so much as because it's like, okay, been there, done that. I'm not horribly excited by it, but we'll see what happens. And I'm in a good spot to be patient. And I would really love it. I would really love to see, you know, starring Michael Fassbender as Harry Dresden. That would be cool. But we'll see what happens.
This is a question for all of you. I want to know if you guys had like a character that you put some of your own inspiration from your life onto those characters.
Well, my parents were divorced when I was really little, and my father wasn't in my life, and so I always write about missing or absent fathers. Like, it's something that I'm aware of doing. So that's like my one thing that I always do. Like, Nick's his dad, he doesn't even know who he is, so.
I grew up in Middle Tennessee, or out in the countryside. Was always thinking about, okay, we're going to get out of this small town and then go somewhere, and then you go to the city, and then it doesn't end up being entirely what you were expecting when you started off. So that definitely worked into my first book. And those questions, just how do you grow up, are pretty big throughout the series. Thank you.
I've got one where I really enjoyed it, where I put a whole scene where my zombie detective is investigating a crime at the large and crowded worldwide horror convention, which is held in the Unnatural Quarter. So you've got real monsters and demons with cosplay fans dressed up as monsters and demons, and there's a scene where an ogre and a real ogre and a fan that's dressed up as a demon with these 8-foot wide bat wings. They're both trying to get into the elevator at the same time. And one of the Cthulhu demon, Yog Shuggaleth, is arguing with the registration because they put too many G's on his name badge. And I drew from my own experience.
When I was a kid, I used to, for lack of a better term, steal a lot of cars. And so is James Stark in my book, so that was a fun thing to put in there. All in research.
I'll just let the statute of limitations has long passed on those.
Well, I kind of agree with Liesel that every character that you write is a little bit a part of you, and you know, even the dogs. You know, they're something that I love my dogs, and they seem to speak to me quite a bit. And then I love basically switching points of view, which I'm starting to do a little bit more. And you know, when I'm writing Granuel, you know, I really get touched by something inside. And it's always fun to kind of inhabit different headspaces and see what happens.
We've got like 4 minutes left. We've got a few more questions. You can make them either to the whole panel or very quick. That would be fabulous. We can get all 6 of you in.
Okay, my question is for Kevin Hearne. You've had a lot of really epic battles in some of the different books. Are there any deaths that you've had to write? Which one was the hardest?
Well, yeah, I've had to write some hard ones, and I've gotten quite a bit of mail about the last book, about some of the deaths in there. And in terms of the hardest, that was actually the hardest one, chapter 1 of the new book. That was very tough to do. And I revised the heck out of that particular chapter to get it right. And went through lots of Phoenix.
My question is for all of you. You will say that you're supposed to write what you know, and yet it seems that all of you guys don't live, or many of you don't live in the city that you're writing about. What was the choice for that? I know that Jim said it was just pick the city on a map, but what was the choice for you guys for why you chose the cities you did?
That's the biggest crap piece of writing advice ever. That's the worst thing anybody tells young writers. You write what you can think of, what you can imagine, not what you know. If you just wrote what you know, nobody here would write. You'd write one book, and yeah, exactly.
And you get to book 2 and you write the same thing all over.
I think the real thing is write what's real. Like, there's a big difference. Write what's real. Next question?
My question is mainly for Jim, what the rest of you could add to it, that's great. In the end of book 12, there's, without there is quite a significant death that, you know, affects Harry Burton quite a bit. I was just wondering, was it difficult to write? Was it like planned well ahead? Was it a moment thing? Like, how does it work out when you do something like that?
It was difficult to write because I was giggling and my fingers kept slipping off the keys. Because I've been planning to do the guy in since book 1. I knew it was going to get this huge reaction from the readers. And finally getting to write that after, because it was planned from the beginning, and finally getting to write that after that long. So yeah, that made it a little bit hard. But no, I mean, stuff like that as a writer, it's what you live for. I mean, you know, to get to that good big moment that you've been planning for a while. I mean, it's one thing typing the end at the end of a manuscript. That is extremely satisfying. But hitting those big moments that you go, I've been waiting to get this zombie T-Rex rolling for 5 years. You know, that's really that's what makes it worth doing.
All right, got one last question.
Hi, this is for Richard, or anyone who wants to answer. And can actually answer. Your books are really insane, and I was wondering if there's anything that you wrote or thought of, or wrote down, like, no, this is too insane, I should not put this. I was going to put this inside.
Yes.
What was it?
And I'm not going to tell you because if I can make it less insane, I might use it in the future book.
I think I got one last question. Do we have time for that one, lady? Stand up and speak louder.
Mine was similar, was just, I mean, zombie T-Rex. Is there a point as a writer where you just think this is too much? My readers are not going to follow me down this road. How do you know where that is?
All right, I want to thank everybody so much for coming.